everybody. I guess it's still morning. Thanks for having me back yet again this month, as we do every month. We're going to do just a bit of a review from last month because we're going to segue into a topic I'm really excited about. And I got a lot of information, and so what I'm going to kind of do is ask CJ to watch the clock. And when we're getting close to being done, give me a hand signal, and we'll just pick it up. Yeah, we'll just pick it up where we left off last month because it's just too important. So, who remembers what we talked about last month? Did I hear somebody say eating healthy on a budget? Yes, that's the answer. We talked about eating healthy on a budget.
I knew that.
And one of the reasons I want to convince you is you've heard kind of the old adage, you are what you eat. Well, I also want to tell you a little story about my noni, and I write a lot about my noni because she was such a great influence on me. But my noni's dad died of plumb wore out. That was the diagnosis on his death certificate when he died. And how many people do you know anymore now that don't have lots of chronic illnesses and die just because they're plumb wore out? It really doesn't happen anymore, does it? Our health system has changed, number one. But number two, our diet and our lifestyles have changed almost at the exact same time. And so which came first, the chicken or the egg, we're not really sure. I read a lot of Dr. Stephen Gundry. His picture is here on the back. He is a cardiothoracic surgeon, which means he does open heart surgery. A lot of people have heart disease. A lot of people have diabetes that leads to heart disease. A lot of people have high blood pressure that leads to heart disease. So I would consider him an expert. And he is trained in our medical system, so he knows all of that medical side of things. But the other really unique thing about him is he also is very much into nutrition. And so he wrote this book. It's called Dr. Gundry's Diet Evolution. But I want to read just a bit of it out of it to you because I need us to all be on the same page about how important it is to eat the right foods and how that impacts our diet and our lifestyle and how we feel. He talks in here, and I'm not going to read the whole book because we have no time for all that, but I have read the whole book. He talks about our genes are programmed for survival, that our genetic buildup, even us and other animals, are programmed for survival. We kind of heard about that in the wild, survival of the fittest. He talks about we have priorities of finding and conserving energy, avoiding injury and pain, and finding pleasure. All of those things are very much wrapped up into our genetic makeup. And so we think about, well, what does that have to do at all with what we eat? It has everything to do with what we eat. We talk about sugar, and we've talked about sugar before in here, and somebody was just talking about drinking more water. I'm so excited for you, because I'm sure you're feeling better drinking all that water. But the thing about sugar is it also plays into that pleasure and into that self-satisfaction cycle. And there was some interesting research that was done that involved rats. And the rats would not overeat their regular chow. But when rats were given sugar or milk chocolate, they couldn't stop gobbling it, and they ate actually until they died. Isn't that interesting? What does that tell us? That might tell us something in our research, that maybe there's some connection there. The other thing that he talks about is how all of that impact is on our body. And he calls it a rusty old body. I feel like I have a rusty old body many days. He talks about the stress on our system and how it creates oxidation. And oxidation is caused from free radicals that rust our body, just like it rusts iron and other things. So when we see how metal can decompose, that's kind of the same thing sometimes that the free radicals are doing on our own system. So eating foods that would counter that would be so important. He also says that most patients hospitalized with heart disease or diabetes show a nutritional profile that they're overfed yet undernourished. Overfed yet undernourished. That's the key to why we're starting and where we're going to start today. I want you to remember that part. So, overfed, undernourished. So the issue is, how do we get more nutrients into our diet? He also then talks about the Western diet. And he talks about when they even took Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, and Aleutians, and when they were exposed to Western diets, their diets converted to Western diets almost immediately, meaning they started eating what we all were eating, and they skyrocketed with chronic health conditions. And prior to that time, those populations did not have the kind of chronic health conditions that we have today. So, segue to, we're going to talk about making healthy choices and what things are the priorities. Somebody in this group not too long ago said to me, we can't afford organic. And so that's one of the reasons I started off last month talking about some ways of eating healthy on a budget. Because I do acknowledge that you need to make choices. We all make choices every day. And so, what does organic really mean? And is it really that much of an issue and a priority? Well, I love doing research for you all for these topics because I learned so much myself. You know, I assume everything I go to the store and says organic on it is organic, meaning it has absolutely no chemicals. Guess what? That's not right. There's 100% organic, which that is true. 100% organic means it's certified organic, there's been no chemicals used, and you can pretty much, other than runoff and, you know, acid rain and whatever, some cohabitation, it's good. U.S. organic means 95% of the ingredients are organic, and the 5 remaining percent comes from an approved list that the USDA has put out. Organic, just that word, means that it's 95%, but there's no artificial food additives, GMOs, no hormones, no antibiotics. And made with organic ingredients can be as low as 70% organic. So, is it really free from all chemicals? No, you've really got to look at your labels and know what you're buying. So why, I mean, are we even bothered? Is anybody else here bothered by knowing that what you're eating has chemicals on it? We should be, because there's all kinds of chemicals. And in fact, today, they spray our wheat crops, not once but twice, with Roundup. And they don't do it necessarily always for the weeds, that's part of it, but they also do it because it helps dry the wheat. But then that Roundup stays in, and that's called, we call it Roundup, it's glyphosate. Glyphosate is the chemical in there. And don't get me to talking about all these chemicals, because whew, we'd be here all day. So, besides getting, you know, like I said, some of the runoff and those kind of things, it is smart to try to eat as much organic as possible. But does everything have to be organic? And that's where we're going to get talking today about making choices. Organic or not organic. I'm a note taker. So I went ahead and gave you your handout so that you could have it in hand, you could look at it, and you could take some notes if you wanted to on it. So please feel free, everybody has handouts at your table. And we're going to follow through a little bit with this. We're going to talk who even worries about, you know, the organic information and where does that information come from. There is an organization called Environmental Working Group, and it's a not-for-profit, nonpartisan organization that is dedicated to protecting human health and the environment, and they do a lot of research, independent research. So they'll go out, they'll go to a local grocery store, they'll buy something, they'll come back, take it to their lab, and they test it. And so a lot of the information that I've given you today is sourced from this organization. We had talked about maybe a month or two ago, you know, the Clean 15 and things like that, and we put those, the dirty dozen, meaning things that you should always buy organic. So we put those terms out there. That's this organization that's really promoting that and really talking about that. And they do this research every year. So some of their lists change a little bit, but not that much, because you know, there are always new things coming on the market, new chemicals, but our plant intake hasn't really changed that much. So today we're going to focus on the inside of that brochure. And we're going to try to, like I said, we're going to try to make it as far as we can, but realizing that we're going to be short for time. So on here, the very first statement underneath the organic top priorities that I want you to see is it says, determining which foods are most important for you depends on your consumption habits. It does no good, like baby food is on this list. I put it on the list because I might give this talk to mothers as well. So I put it on the list, so for you, you don't have to worry about that, right? And if you never eat kiwi, maybe you don't have to worry about that either. But the things that you consume the most every day are the things that you should worry about. And coffee is one of the #1 things. And we've talked a bit about coffee, but hopefully I'm going to convince you a little bit more today. We've talked about how in adults it's like the #1 way that we get herbicides and pesticides in our diet is from coffee. But the other thing about that is I didn't really talk about all the wonderful health benefits of coffee. I mean, there are health benefits of coffee. Drinking coffee actually has a lot of antioxidants in them for us. So it's actually helpful. There's an independent research that was done. One was done in America, and one was done in Britain, that found links between drinking coffee and reduced risk of liver disease, circulatory problems, and diseases linked with our digestive tract. So, what's the most important antioxidant in coffee? It's a substance called glutathione. And you can get glutathione in other things as well. You can get it in broccoli, in bok choy, you can get it in blood oranges, Brazil nuts, hazelnuts, sardines, but you also can get it in coffee. And so that tends to be of that list, probably, I mean, maybe broccoli and blood oranges, but from what most of us consume on a day-to-day basis, coffee would be one of those things. So why is that antioxidant such a powerhouse for you? It's because we talked a little bit about that oxidation that we were talking about, the rusting of our bodies. It helps to monitor those and get rid of those free radicals, which is why that antioxidant is so important. So if we can think about it from that rust analogy, if we're eating things that are causing our rust, coffee's coming through and cleaning up some of that rust, okay? So it's an important thing to consider. It also decreases inflammation in our body. And how many things are caused from inflammation? Arthritis, cardiovascular disease, when our arteries and our veins get inflamed, pulmonary fibrosis, fibromyalgia. The list goes on and on and on of things that can be caused from just inflammation in our body. So it really can be very, very helpful. It also helps with constipation. Some people are constipated as they age, and so that's a good thing too. It can also help with type 2 diabetes. So there's many reasons that we should drink more coffee. However, the other thing to that is, what are you putting in your coffee? Even if you get so motivated after my speech today, if you go out and you buy that organic coffee for $6.99, you can buy it $6.99 for 12 ounces, and you decide you're going to go with organic coffee because you drink a lot of coffee at home, please don't put artificial creamers in it or artificial sugar in it. That's the other thing. We need to keep it as pure as possible. So what do you put in? You can put in regular milk, usually organic milk. We're going to talk about milk. Or you can put in coconut oil. You can add cinnamon. Those all things are very healthy to put in, but when we start adding non-artificial sweeteners other than stevia, stevia would be fine. That's when we doctor it up and we make it so that it isn't even good for us even after it's organic. Okay? Questions about coffee? Okay. We are moving right along in our list. Strawberries and blueberries. You know, strawberries and blueberries, they are sensitive and heavily exposed, right? When you're on the plant, they're right there on the bush or they're down by the ground, and they really don't have a thick outer shell to help protect them. So they absorb a lot of the chemicals that are put in and around them to keep them bug-free and that kind of thing. So locally grown, organically grown would be the ideal when it comes to strawberries and blueberries. The next on the list, you want to go down or across? Let's go down. Apples. Apples, again, another wonderful thing, but a thing that you should try to buy organic if at all possible. They harbor a number of pesticides that traditional farmers use to keep the pests and the diseases at bay. And some people say, well, what if I take that skin off? That skin isn't as thick as one would think. So even with taking the skin off, that is probably penetrated. There's going to be other fruits that we're going to talk about that their skin is so thick you don't have to worry about it. But so apples made that list of things that if at all possible, buy organic apples. And like I said, we're going to skip baby food unless you help watch out for your grandkids and you want to share this information with your grandchildren. We're not going to really talk about baby food. Milk. You know, milk is one of those things as well that even watching, as I do, girls, and how quickly they're maturing versus how quickly they would mature years ago. Some of that, I think, is the hormones that we are finding in our milk. Because we give them that milk to produce, or we give them the hormones so the cows will produce more milk. And yet, when we drink it, we're drinking those hormones as well. So we're getting that in our system. So that's another item that, for primarily the reason, not necessarily from pesticides, but from the perspective of the hormone piece, and they do use some antibiotics, it would be best to drink organic milk. But again, if you're not a big milk drinker and you're putting 2 tablespoons in your coffee every day, then maybe that's not something that you need to say, I'm going to make that investment to drink that and organic. Yes?
My daughter was telling me about this milk that stays on the counter until you open it up and then you put it in the refrigerator. And I kind of, what's your perspective on it?
So you're talking about irradiated milk.
I guess.
Yeah, it's a different process. In fact, there are countries, South America, you go to South America and you buy eggs and milk off of a shelf. They're not refrigerated at all. And so mostly that milk has been treated with radiation. I would go with organic milk, personally.
So you're saying that milk probably should not.
I don't, you know, I tell you what I'll do. I'll do some research on what's that impact, the fact that they're radiating the milk. Just to me would be of concern. But I'd be happy to look into it for you. How about that? I'll put that on my to-do list for next month. Okay, let's go down. Peaches, nectarines, we'll kind of do those together. You know, they're delicious. They're stone fruits that have very thin edible skins, and they're naturally very delicate. So they are typically sprayed a great deal with poisons because everybody likes them, right? I mean, my mom has fruit trees and she always complains about everybody coming around and eating her fruit. So again, these would be those that you would want to buy organic, because it's even taking that little bit of a peel off isn't gonna do really good. Then there's grapes, kind of the same story with grapes. They found a single grape had 15 different pesticides present on it. And so they ripen very quickly. Part of that is the reason they end up attracting insects, and they often get sprayed with multiple chemicals to keep them untouched so that when they are picture perfect when we get them in the store. Again, another one, even if you're buying it, try to wash it, but you're probably not going to get all those chemicals off from what has been penetrated through that pretty fragile skin.
What about that spray they have out there? You can spray.
To wash your fruit?
Yeah.
Again, you know, for things that are on the outer surface, that's very good. I mean, soap and water too. And in fact, we're going to talk a little bit about that. You know, I'm guilty as anybody else. I buy an organic cantaloupe or a non-organic cantaloupe, and I cut right through it with my knife, and then I use that same knife to dice it up. And I don't wash the outside of that cantaloupe. And so it is something we've got to think about, because once you cut through it, you're bringing those chemicals that are on the outside in, unless you've washed it good. So we're going to talk about that on some other things about washing our fruit, and but then using a separate knife. So grass-fed meat. I'm a big believer in grass-fed organic beef. And again, you've got to go back to how much of your diet consists of beef. But again, it has to do a lot with the hormones. It has to do with the antibiotics. And it also has to do with what they're eating. You know, they're out and about, typically organic, free-range cows are out and about, they're more pastured. And so the health benefit to you is that what they're consuming makes their meat healthier than what you're consuming as well. Peanut butter. Is that an odd thing, do you think, to make the list? I think it made the list because of the amount of peanut butter that many children eat. Kids love peanut butter, and it will be pesticide free, but the organic brands utilize a healthier recipe to boost the good for you goodness, is what this says. Meaning, pretty much the peanuts are fine, it's everything else they put in it that then makes the peanut butter not as healthy if you're not doing it from an organic perspective. So if you've got kids, or yourself, if you like a lot of peanut butter, that's something to consider. The other thing that's really interesting is, anybody seen peanut butter powder?
I've heard about it.
Yeah, you can buy it. Kroger's has got it right there on the shelf. They've got several different varieties. They do have some organic varieties as well of the peanut butter powder, which means you can take it home and you can say, okay, I want to make my peanut butter with honey and a little bit of coconut oil, and I'm going to mix that up, and that's what I'm going to use for my peanut butter. I've done it, and it's actually really good. So it's one of those things where it allows you to, or people use it a lot, like to make a milkshake or a smoothie. So you add peanut butter. That's a great way to add more protein to someone's diet. Somebody that maybe needs more protein, you can use that powder in lots of things. And so it allows you to increase the protein component to maybe something that wouldn't typically. You can add it to pancake batter. You can add it to cookie batter. So again, you're adding more nutrients by using some of those powders. So anyway, I digress. But peanut butter made the list. Celery. Celery scored very high on their list with 13 chemicals detected. And the crunchy veggie is very porous and grows largely outside of the ground, so it absorbs chemicals easily. I'm here to tell you, organic celery doesn't last very long. That's the one thing, and it's, you know, it is sad when you're like, I'm going to buy all this stuff organic, and then I buy it, and the next day it's limp at home. I still end up using it because I think, well, I paid for it, I'm going to use it. But it doesn't stay crisp like those non-organic ones. I don't know what they put on it. Maybe it's part of these 13 chemicals that actually keeps it crisper longer because we all like it crisp, and yet in the end, you know, it's not good for us.
Freeze it, you can always use it for cooking.
True, exactly. And that's my thing. If I'm using it to cook with, it doesn't matter what the consistency is, you know, on the chopping board, it's going to get limp anyway. So exactly. And if you freeze it, yeah, you're using it to throw in soups and stews and that kind of thing. And so you're still getting the benefit of it without the actual crispness. But yeah. Okay. Potatoes. Potatoes, you know, we eat a lot of potatoes as Americans, don't we? And it's one of those things that even when you scrub and peel, it's very tough to get the chemicals off of those potatoes. And they're in the ground, and so it also absorbs things in our ground. So unfortunately, any runoff or any other chemicals that are being used in close proximity sometimes gets in those potatoes as well. So it's always best to, you know, if you're going to use non-potatoes, it's always best to peel them. But even at that, if we could make that a priority to buy organic, would be best. Tomatoes. Everybody loves tomatoes, and the bugs and pests do too, which then just means more pesticides. I've got all these pages all turned up here. So tomatoes made the list as things that we should, it says it's one of the only fruits and vegetables that has been proven to be more nutritious in its organic form, because the organic tomatoes have nearly double the concentration of flavonoids, which is what's so healthy about tomatoes, than their counterpart. Part of that, they said, it's kind of unknown why all of that is true, but I think part of that is the organic ones are not chemically treated to ripen. Many other tomatoes are picked green, they're chemically treated to get them to ripen red and then shipped to you. So organic tomatoes, since they're not using that same process, are actually on the vine longer, which would make sense. Then the benefit is that they're getting them riper before they're ever even picking them to send them to you. Does that make sense? Lettuce. Any greens, and we're going to talk about lettuce and greens, spinach, kale, collard greens, kind of together, because they're all kind of the same thing. I mean, it's those leafy greens. Leafy greens, unfortunately, are highly susceptible to pests, and so they get sprayed a lot, and there's no protection. I mean, the leaf itself is just no protection. So spinach, kale, collard greens, lettuce itself is preferred to be in organic form. Cucumbers, the same thing. Again, it has more to do with the peeling and the fact that, you know, even when we peel it, that is still penetrated through. And peppers are the same thing. Hot peppers, sweet peppers, they kind of all fall into that same category of vegetables that are, you know, sitting outside. Everybody likes them, so they get a lot of pesticides to keep them nice, keep the bugs off, and then we get those as well. I'm looking at the clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just like, because I'm kind of getting, so we've pretty much made it through the top priorities for things to buy organic. I know there's other things on the handout, so we're going to talk about the other things, and I'll bring these back, so you don't have to worry about, well, I can bring my handout back. I'll bring it back again. But we'll go through then next time the things that you really don't have to buy organic, which are kind of clean 15, the things that are safe to clean and peel, and then some other important considerations of things when you're talking about your health that you'd want to consider. Questions for me today about what we talked about as far as priorities for things to buy organic? Anybody? Kroger? I don't know. I'm assuming Walmart would have them as well, but Kroger's does have organic potatoes. It's interesting to me, in the good old days, everything, well, I think now that they've reorganized, it's a little bit better. So that back wall at Kroger's, it's all organic, that's where they tend to have, although sometimes they have some things like the tomatoes they don't have over there. So there are things that are organic that aren't on that back wall. When in doubt, I ask. Because sometimes they move things around and then I can't find them and I get frustrated. And so instead of getting frustrated, they're usually pretty helpful. Anything else?
I have another.
Sure.
Because I live by myself, I don't buy a bunch of groceries because they spoil them. But I noticed some potatoes are bad and so before you buy them. Wouldn't that hold in the chemicals?
I would think so.
So you don't want to buy them already wrapped.
Right. And actually, I think those that are already wrapped like that are not organic. So, and there's little bags, which I find really helpful. They're not overly big. I don't even know. They may not even be, maybe they're, I don't know. I hate to say how many pounds they are because they're kind of a nice little bag of organic potatoes. You know, take a couple out as you need them and then put the rest in the fridge. So. Well, thank you all again for your attention and your questions. Again, I have the surveys, as you've all been helping me out, which is wonderful. It helps me as well, since this is a grant from the White County Health Department. So if you'll please fill out your evaluations for me, that's always really helpful for me. And again, I've got handouts that I'll bring back next month. If you have any other friends or family that you think might want a handout, I've got extras, so let me know about that as well. And yes, and if you're not going to keep them, I'll take them back as well. So thanks.
Thank you.